Hello everyone and welcome to the first panel session of Cosmetics Business Live 2021. This stream's panel topic is titled Clean Beauty, Hero or Villain. Now, there is little doubt of the huge consumer demand for beauty products defined as clean. The clean beauty movement is something of an evolution of what was once marketed as being natural or organic and or free from, but with a greater emphasis on the exclusion of certain ingredients. And it initially took its cues from the clean eating trend, which emphasizes a plant-based diet that is free from highly processed foods, and which was also highly popular and continues to be popular. There has been a boom in entrepreneurial new beauty brands whose ethos is clean, while major names in retail like Sephora and Target in the US have introduced their own in-house seals of approval for brands that are free from specific ingredients. So this is really a mainstream rather than a fringe movement at this juncture. However, because there is always a however, some of the terminology used by the clean beauty movement, such as chemical-free or non-toxic, has been accused of being misleading and, on occasion, bad science. And much like the clean eating movement before it, there has been something of a small pushback. A 2020 survey carried out by Influenster and Bazaar Voice revealed that while 90% of respondents were inclined to buy clean labelled beauty products, 60% believed beauty brands that claimed to be clean did not adequately explain why. So while there is undoubtedly huge consumer appetite for clean, there is also consumer confusion. So the objective of this panel is to really hash out what clean beauty actually is, whether it is a positive or a negative movement, and what responsibilities do we have as brands who might be claiming clean beauty or suppliers who might be selling to clean beauty brands to impart information to those people who are buying our goods. To help us do this, we have a fantastic panel today, and I'd urge you, the audience, to pop as many questions through as you'd like for me to field to this panel. And you can do this by clicking on the live discussion box and the questions tab, and then sending them in. The panel today includes Laura Ruddo, who is founder of Evolve Organic Beauty and S5 Skincare. And Laura is a passionate advocate of ethical business and sustainable living. We have Sam Farmer. Sam is founder of the eponymous unisex brand Sam Farmer, and he is heavily involved in cosmetic science education and information via the Society of Cosmetic Scientists, or the SCS. Natalie Elliott is founder of Sacred and is a campaigner for natural and non-toxic beauty. And finally, Susie Willis is a founder of plant-based high-performance skincare brand Romilly Wild. Hello, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure to have you join us today.
Really happy to be here to join you. Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you here. So to begin, guys, definitions. When we use the term clean beauty, maybe Natalie, if we start with you on behalf of Sacred, what does that mean for you and for your brand, that definition, clean beauty?
Well, for us, clean beauty is actually quite simple. It refers to products that are made from 100% naturally derived ingredients. So that doesn't include any synthetic chemicals or anything that's known to be harmful, and even more so any ingredients that we believe are questionable. So they're on the fence, they're those uncertain ones, and we just think, if there's a natural alternative to give you the look and feel that you want, then that's what we'd go for. But for us, it actually goes a step further in that we really do believe that natural and clean beauty products should really be outperforming their sort of synthetic cousins. There is absolutely no reason why natural beauty products can't give you the exact same look and feel that you would get from other products that aren't containing just natural products. So we're really pushing to create products that prove to consumers that nature wins and nature does provide.
Lovely, thank you. And Susie, maybe for Romilly Wild, if I could ask you the same question, what does clean beauty mean for you and your brand?
It sets a standard, I think, when it comes to integrity of sourcing of everything from componentry, raw materials, down to the actual ingredients, the INCI list. So it's all about our body absorbing products that actually could be potentially harmful. And this is the thing that I think we will absolutely get to on this call, is absolutely defining or redefining what clean should mean. And for me, it's not hiding about being cleanish or 50 shades of clean, which is a phrase that I use quite a bit, which is, if you're going to do clean, which for me is no synthetics, it's nothing there that isn't there to serve the skin, then you are all about the totality, the 360 of being clean, which is about your approach to having high performance, absolutely. That goes without question, but also your approach and your standards when it comes to the quality control, the codes of practice, everything to do with your relationships with your suppliers. So you've got your beautiful brand and you can do all the marketing you like and you say that you're clean. But if you know, like I sleep at night because I know that it's all about what you do behind the scenes that validates and gives substantiation to those claims. And we'll get onto this as well, because there is very little substantiation about having those claims, and there's no standard. So, and it's next level for us at Romilly Wild. It's more about next level natural. So organic means not a lot, sadly, anymore when it comes to finished product. And natural, it's got to be, we've got to raise the bar on that, because natural has become very ambiguous, very one-dimensional. So it's about high performance, high integrity, really high levels of I guess having that new standard, next generation, because it's not just coming from brands, it's that push-pull, it's coming from consumers. They're judging us by our INCI list, quite rightly they are.
Sorry, Susie, would it be possible for me to expand on something you said there? Because it's really interesting. I actually was asked a question last week from one of our regular customers, and she'd asked me, what do I know about these forever chemicals in plastics? So obviously there is a huge issue for the beauty industry in that we have to contain liquids, and plastic and glass tend to be the go-to. But of course, we all know as manufacturers that there are many different isms of plastic that we can use. And I think you started to touch on the whole supply chain needs to be clean. And I just wanted to expand on the packaging element, because I think if you're creating a clean product, even more so, you have to consider the type of packaging that you're using, because obviously you do get chemical seepage from plastics. So just wanted to really completely agree with what you've said there. It's the holistic approach to manufacturing.
And I think, the consumers don't even know the half of it, the issues that we have as brand owners about packaging. Packaging suppliers need to really, push the boundaries on innovation, because what is the point of creating this perfect formulation that is suspended and delivering if you're going to put it in a pack that compromises it? And also, I come from the food industry, and so product leaching or plasticides leaching into product, it's a whole other world, and something that I am, it breaks my heart, because it's very, very complicated. So my word, working with packaging manufacturers, that's a whole other conversation. That's the panel. But I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's fascinating that that you brought up packaging, because one thing I wanted to do was to really kind of delve into the specifics of what clean beauty is, and for example, what exactly is it that your brands would maybe avoid, both ingredient wise but also packaging wise, to meet this criteria? I mean, we have a lot of suppliers watching us today. As a brand, what do you want to say to them, that the packaging guys, that you require as a brand? Oh, and maybe if I pose this to possibly to Susie first, and then maybe to Laura.
Okay, so if I were literally at a trade show right now, and I was meeting packaging innovation companies, I would say stick to your knitting. So I think that you either are experts in glass, in which case you need to innovate in that direction. But I think it is it's not just misleading us, the brand owners, because I often find because I'm moving into at the moment, I absolutely have got to evolve into post-industrial recycled plastic, which I want to do. We all know that there are a lot of tubes that you can buy because they're going to go into minis. Trade alert. We're going to go, spoiler alert, that you can do one thing and then you don't do the other. So for example, with wanting to use sugar cubes, you know what I mean? Sugar tubes rather. So you've got that lovely one story from one end, which is the actual materials from a natural source. And so I'm a brand owner going, yay, that sounds really great. Halo, you could have got a nice story to tell your consumers, but then they're not biodegradable. So it's like this one thing you can do well. So I really do pity, and I'm glad that my business is not in packaging innovation, because I think it's really hard, because you've got to deliver two things. That you need to deliver hundreds of things, but the two things that one needs to deliver is the compatibility with the formulation, and second, you've got to it has to perform from a dosing perspective, how it looks around your brand. Has it got the right cues for your brand? You know, is it glass? Are you having it, you know, with glass with silver foil? So it has to appeal from a marketing perspective, but it has to function to protect your product at the same time. And I think that's often where you'll compromise somewhere. And I think it's a really hard thing to do, because, you know, everyone on this panel do not want to compromise on the integrity of the finished product. But equally, we're trying to sell a dream, sell a story, because there's no point having, you know, products that fail, or, you know, it's very complicated. But I think we're getting much closer, but it's going to take, and this is the reality check, it's going to take, I think, another 3 to 5 years until we start to see proper innovation that starts to kind of, you know, open up those from both sides, the consumer side plus the brand side. I think it's a tough gig. I really do.
Lovely, thank you. So going to again, the specifics, and Laura, with regards to ingredients, you know, as a clean beauty brand, what is it that you might choose to avoid, and why? For what reason?
So we wanted to create a very, very clear standard of what we would and wouldn't use in our products. And we've actually chosen to adopt an industry standard, because we have been working with EcoCert most recently at the Cosmos level, but before that, actually, with their own standard for 10 years plus. And I think it's really important, because otherwise you can really go and ask ingredients companies 20 questions. And before I set up my own business, when I was helping to set up a brand called Nude Skincare, which was about 15 years ago, that's what we were doing. We were going, you know, what's the solvent, what's the preservative? And we were asking all these questions. And then what we realized was it was actually much better, more transparent to work with an industry recognized standard, so that we could say to ingredients manufacturers, is it Cosmos? And then that's very, very clear. And they go into so much detail, and they've got a very, very comprehensive standard, which we have studied extensively and we buy into. And they have avoided the problematic ingredients. We don't know if all of them are a problem. I say ingredients because everything's a chemical, so we can't really say, I don't think chemical free. And I think, you know, you need to have the line somewhere, whether something's synthetic or not, whether it's petrochemical or not, I guess, is sort of the line for us. But we are always transparent, and because we work with Cosmos, we put, you know, the percentage of natural and organic on our packs as a way of being transparent. And we don't always get to 100% natural, because things need to be properly preserved, and they cannot always be preserved naturally, although recently we found a very good natural system that does preserve them that we're using. So we avoid ingredients where there are question marks, and we work with Cosmos to define that standard for us. And I think it's important to have a standard that's quite clear across the industry. And I think there is a standard for clean, which I think the big part of that can come from Cosmos. But of course, packaging is another issue. There are some Cosmos rules around packaging as well. So you can only use certain types of plastic because of the issues around things leaching into products. We are thinking about the sustainability angle as well as the clean angle at Evolve. So we do use glass, and we use post-consumer recycled plastic for things that can't be in glass, so things that go into the shower, for example. I think the areas where I would love to see more innovation are around flexible film materials. We would love to have a fully biodegradable sachet material that we could use, because that's an area where we can't quite get as far along on that as I would really like. And there were lots of other amazing innovations around, cornstarch and tubes and things that we're looking into now we don't use yet. I think the other area where we are starting to work is looking at refills and how we can try and reuse some of the bits of the packaging that are hard to recycle. As I think I agree with the definition of clean in terms of looking at the whole supply chain, not just about the ingredients. And I think for us, we don't tend to use the word clean very much, actually. We talk about natural and organic, and we talk about sustainable more, because I think it's more specific. On the sustainability side, it's the pumps that are the problem, because they have a little spring inside them. And because of the very precision requirements and making sure that pump fits together, you can't use recycled elements in it because it doesn't expand evenly. So pumps are a problem. They're normally virgin material plastic. It's hard to find attractive pumps without a spring. It's hard to recycle pumps. So how can we reuse them? We have a refill scheme where people can buy the bottom of the bottle and reuse their pump. So that's one way. But I think even on that, we need to be specific about what the cleanest option is, because we're going to start doing life cycle analysis to work out, is it better to accept products back and wash them, but what about all the shipping? Or is it better to send a refill in a pouch? Or is it better to actually eliminate all of it and make a solid product? That, in my mind, is still an area that's sort of undefined. I think you should do your homework, and you should have a standard and be able to communicate it. And on the sustainability, we've just released a sustainability report where we've gone plastic negative. So we've offset all of the plastic we do use, and we're in the middle of doing carbon footprinting. And I see a lot of brands out there doing fantastic things with ocean plastic or a special kind of plastic that they're using. But for us, I want to be really, really comprehensive and rigorous in our approach, so that we're not misleading anyone, even unintentionally, and we're not greenwashing. We're actually really doing everything I can really think of to make us as clean and as green and as sort of sustainable and natural as possible. Because I think that the reason we need to do this, by the way, is because of all the toxins in products, even in really micro amounts. Like, the reason organic is really important is because the micro amounts of pesticides that enter our bodies and disrupt our bodies. And my sort of research looking at, the modern living impact on our bodies has really led me there, and trying to improve my own skin and realize that natural living and sort of all the things we're talking about are just better for our bodies. And that's sort of my strong belief. And I think that, all of that means that we can sort of blaze a trail to help the industry move forward. And it takes a while for ingredient and other suppliers to respond, but they do respond. And over the 15 years I've been looking at this and asking them for more natural ingredients, I've seen a huge number of increase of materials we can use now. So I think that the packaging will come through. There's certainly a desire for it, and I think the manufacturers will respond to that. It will just take them a little bit of time to do that.
Fantastic. So I'm getting the impression that from the sustainability side of things, there's no one single perfect answer, but as you say, it's about doing your homework and finding what works for your brand in the best possible way.
I think there is probably an answer. It's just that we don't know exactly what it is, because we need to be more rigorous about how we define it, and doing some nice life cycle analysis and, the actual homework on it will help us understand what the answer is.
Lovely. Rigorous is always good with research, definitely. Now, the subtitle of this presentation is, of course, Hero or Villain. So, to play devil's advocate, Sam, now I know you've got a lot to say on this topic. It's a big passion of yours. For you, in what ways is maybe the clean beauty movement a little bit problematic as far as you're concerned?
Right. This is a huge, complex, nuanced, difficult industry that we are all in. And what I've heard this morning is, brands really doing good things. They really are wanting to do things about sustainability, packaging. They want to select ingredients that are doing the right thing for their market and who they're formulating for. So I don't really want to go into sort of detail, you know, what's the definition of a toxin, what's the definition of toxic, because, you know, let's just keep it a bit higher than that. I think what we've got here is we've got an issue around language and the use of language. You know, who doesn't want to be healthy? Words like clean, organic, natural, that's what we like. You know, these are great words. But I think we need to be aware that it isn't the one speaking, it isn't the brand giving the information that decides the meaning of it. It's the consumer hearing it. It's what the consumer understands we are saying that defines what that means. And I think if we look at the word clean, if you look at it in a dictionary, you know, it means free from dirt, marks or stains, or morally uncontaminated. So does that mean that we are a corrupt, dirty industry? I think that's the first thing that is problematic. It's sort of saying that, you know, if you don't say you're clean, you're dirty. If you are somehow morally corrupt, if you use synthetics, you know, that discussion about between what's natural and what's synthetic. Well, you know, most cosmetic ingredients are from plant origin, but what makes it synthetic? You know, to get squalane, we used to use shark's livers, but now we can get it from olive oil, but that has to go through 9 to 12 synthetic processes to get squalane. So is it still natural after it's gone through so many synthetic processes? And who's to say, okay, we're going to say one synthetic process or 3 synthetic processes? So I think it's complicated, it's difficult. And also, you know, negating synthetic ingredients is fine for a brand. You know, we can all formulate how we want to formulate. It's perfect. But doing it to the detriment of an ingredient that is proven and far outperforms the natural alternative, I think is sometimes a bit can be unhelpful to the industry, because we are all trying to do the best for our consumers. And if we don't claim to be natural, organic, clean, etc., and we're just formulating products for a specific condition, then I think restricting ourselves can be a difficult conversation to have, although we are all entitled to formulate how we want to formulate. It's difficult for me not to sort of go down rabbit holes with this because it's such a big, complex conversation. But I suppose the other thing I want to say is that, you know, clean beauty, hero or villain, is a bit like saying, you know, Father Christmas, hero or villain. You know, he's a hero. He does lovely, good, great things, but he isn't real. You know, it isn't real. You know, don't tell the kids. Well, in our context, the kids are the consumer. And when the consumer discovers that clean it doesn't really exist. There are lots of elements within it that it's trying to incorporate, whether that's sustainability. But sustainability isn't the same thing as safety. It's not the same thing as synthetics, naturals. It's a huge conversation. And when our consumer discovers that actually clean doesn't really exist, I think that we need to be careful not to alienate our consumer using language that sort of diverts or pretends to be something, to be one thing, when actually in reality, as brand owners, we all know in reality that you know, it's somewhat different. You know, we all have difficulty with packaging. We all have difficulty with supply chains. The fact that a brand doesn't export and only has 3 SKUs, they will always be far more sustainable than a brand who has 12 or 15 SKUs and exports around the world, no matter what that brand is doing. So I think that I understand where this comes from, and it comes from a really good place, and everyone's trying to do the very best they can, and it's fantastic. But I think we've entered into an area where we are setting the cosmetic science industry in direct confrontation with the marketing departments, because now the science industry can communicate directly with the consumer, which they've not been able to do before. When the science is undermined using language, then the scientists will come back and defend that. And I do find it amazing that in 2021, where we've developed vaccines, we're flying drones on Mars, science is making huge leaps. Somehow our industry, which is 100% chemical industry, we are the chemical industry, it's sort of trying to progress by attacking itself. And it's a bit like cosmetics are terrible, buy my cosmetics. So I think that it's really difficult, but I think essentially we're moving in the right direction. I think it's great. Everyone's doing really good things, but I think the use of language has slightly slipped, and we are setting ourselves up for a bit of a fall, if I may be so bold.
Well, thank you for giving us kind of your point of view there as well. Maybe would any of the other panelists have anything to say maybe in response to that?
If I may, I would love to. I was busy nodding. I hope you saw I was agreeing with pretty much everything you said, Sam. Language is so important. We need to be so responsible for how we use communication, and I think it is incredibly misleading. I hope you don't mind. I was trying to find a book actually, which is written by Dr. Teresa Callahan, who I'm sure everyone in the room has heard of, called Covered in Adjectives, and it's just so fascinating. But I think you're absolutely right. I think that information is the most important thing, right? And that consumers can, it's all about choice. It's all about, I want the information, then I will decide what makes sense for me, and whether or not I think it's just BS, right? So that's up to the consumer. We just need to speak with eloquence and articulation and with clarity and brevity about the language that we use, and use it responsibly, for heaven's sake. It really bothers me. But I think I'm just really glad on the whole clean, villains, toxic, etc. I'm glad that we're moving away from the phrase non-toxic, because that is skull and crossbones. It makes consumers so fearful of, therefore, is anything that is non-toxic toxic? Is my skin going to fall off? Will I get cancer? It's kind of actually quite serious. We do need to take all of this language very, very, very seriously, because there's a lot of apathy around people not trusting brands, and also there's a lot of, as I said at the beginning of the call, a lot of ambiguity around messaging. And I think it is absolutely our key responsibility to give that information. What I'm really keen to talk about, and I think Sam and I have to get to go and have another chat, and let's bring Caroline, your friend Caroline Hirons, onto the call as well. But I know I'm terrified of her. I probably wet my pants with fear. But anyway, I kind of want to have that call at the same time, because I'm gripped and fascinated and bothered by the whole conversation. But the whole kind of, yes, and I think you mentioned it earlier about they're all chemicals. We can't use chemical free, and we need to educate about that with responsibility. We are all made up of chemicals, and it's a positive thing. It's not a negative thing. But I start ranting on about synthetics, and I know that that this is the subject that we're also tackling. But for me, synthetics isn't about, because I love science. Biotech, bring it on. And thank God, if we didn't have science, we wouldn't be where we are today with these vaccinations, and hopefully a unbelievable innovation in science, which is Big Bang Theory. But synthetics for me is about bulkers and fillers, which are put into formulations to make them go further. So you're going to put water in the front end, and that water in the front end is there to help create more volume of product. And for me, that is about the business making money, not about serving the skin. And I'm afraid I'm a bit of an old-fashioned bird, because I come from a nutritional background. I used to have a baby food business, for anyone who's interested. And perfect example of the food industry is that if you're making a sauce, a baby food, you're going to put, if you want to make money, you put vegetable oil in there, you put cornstarch in there, and hey, bingo, you're going to make extra volume. But that is not nutritionally good for your child. It's not a healthy substitute. So I used quinoa, which has the same principle of bulking because it's a starch, but it's also a protein, an amino acid. So you're doing, so this is I think one of the things that we can learn about how to work well with nature and plant-derived materials, that they can do the job of a starch, a polymer, a cross polymer, and acryloside, but it's from a natural source. And I'm not saying that those synthetics are harmful, because this is the bit that Sam will absolutely want to talk about. It doesn't mean they're bad for you. They're just not serving your skin. So, and this is why, and I talk about totality in 360, it has to be about, if you're going to be looking at the ingredient list and checking, you know, forensically, which I do every single other person's INCI list. Yes, of course, the minute I see a peg, I just go, oh, seriously, did you have to? Or if I see a cross polymer or an acryloside especially, or a vinyl, I'm thinking, am I in B&Q or am I in a beauty aisle? It's extraordinary. But yeah, I salute people out there who we must take guidance from, like Dr. Teresa Callahan, who, you know, because I think it's very important that we are super mindful that we are responsible for the next generation of how we should be communicating as brand owners. And by the way, this is not just skin industry, beauty industry. This is every form of communication with our very vulnerable young adults who are perplexed in fear of what they can and cannot trust. Rant over.
No, we love ranting. That's what this panel is all about. And you'll be thrilled to know, I'm sure, that Teresa Callaghan is actually going to be our first presenter tomorrow morning for the regulatory stream as well. So do tune in for that. Now, to kind of get back to the kind of the marketing aspect here, which I think from the sounds of it, you know, I think in a way we're all on the kind of same page here, but maybe there's a bit of a disconnect with regards to the marketing. So say I owned a beauty brand that had all the hallmarks of a clean brand that we've been talking about. You know, there's a sustainability angle, trying to stick with maybe non-synthetic and possibly, as you say, non-filler ingredients. You know, is there any way of marketing it? Is there a marketing best practice that I could try to stick to ensure minimal consumer confusion or misinformation? Laura or Natalie, we haven't heard from you guys in a while. Would either of you have an angle on that?
So I think I covered some of this from my perspective in my last answer, but I think, you know, following a standard, being very transparent, putting all of the information out there for customers to help them make the decision. I think that's a very good point from Susie. You know, as I said, we follow the Cosmos standard, so we follow all of their ingredient rules. We put the information on the pack. You can see how natural the product is. We don't say anything about what it's free from, partly because that's now become made illegal in the EU. You can't say free from this and free from that, partly because of the reason Sam was saying, because it makes people worry, well, if it's free from this, then what about the brands who include those things? But we've never done that anyway, because we want to be positive. We want to promote the use of natural ingredients because we think they're good for skin, rather than talking about what other people do, because that's not what our customers are interested in. They want to know what they should use and what's good for them. I think it's just all about being I agree being responsible is really important, but also being very transparent and very honest, and sort of also saying where things are not perfect yet. So if you can't get to 100% natural, then say you're 99, whatever it is, % natural, because customers appreciate the honesty, I think, on that.
I think just to expand on that, there's really a certain amount of education that needs to happen within the clean beauty industry for consumers. I mean, we come across quite a lot of customers that in the first instance had no idea that there might have been ingredients within some of their other products that were questionable or could be harmful to their bodies. And this is a real problem, I think, that exists as well, in that there's so much smoke and mirrors going on, and consumers just really aren't aware of what is bad for me and what is acceptable for my body, or what is going to cause me zero harm, and what's, you know, guaranteed to be sort of non-abrasive on my skin, and what ingredients are the ones that, should I decide I want to start looking at the INCIs, that I need to be aware of. We're all sort of time strapped. You know, when we're rushing through the supermarket or through the chemist and we're picking up our products, not many of us have time to actually turn the bottle around and have a really long and engaged look at the ingredients. And then when they do, we often find that people are massively confused by the sort of Latin names of the ingredients anyway, and not many people can actually differentiate between those ingredients that are bad for them and those that actually are just a really innocent plant, you know, because sometimes they can sound quite noxious in the way that they're sort of placed on the Inky. So, you know, from our point of view, we've always stood by, you know, let's educate the consumer. And I think you're really right, actually, Laura. You know, it's then about, it comes down to, if you've got an educated consumer and they're free to choose what they want to use, they can choose to use something that's 97% natural and feel completely happy and content with that. Or equally, they could be a consumer that says, no, actually, I'm going to go all out and I want to only use products that are 100% natural. And it's just about giving the consumer that education and that constant choice.
I agree. And just to add to that, I think, you know, I talked to you earlier about standards, and for example, I looked at Credo and their standards, and Sephora and their standards, and this, I mean, because the market doesn't lie. So, you know, if the clean beauty market is growing like the tsunami that it is, then obviously that is something that the consumers, they associate that with something that is obviously healthier, because obviously wellness, you know, detoxification, all those things are a trend, and we all know why. But I think it's having those standards and actually seeing that through as a brand. So I think, you know, it's opening up. It's who you line yourself up with, and I think that is really important. That and I think that when you are, as a brand, it's really hard because you feel quite isolated. This is where it is all about, you know, working alongside like-minded brands so that we can all support one another, because I think we're all in the same cookie jar together. But it just is, as you say, it's the whole smoke and mirrors, which I think is creating that confusion. So there should be a standard. So one of the things I'm hoping to do with my cosmetic chemist, and one of the things that I'm also endeavoring to do, but, you know, time and money and all of that, is to start to create something as an industry standard, some kind of, you know, equivalent to Cosmos, which is clean. Because one of the things that that really gets on my billy goat is when